You could say she was in a daze. An 81-year-old Japanese lady left her home in Pasadena this past Thursday evening to get a few groceries at the grocery store. But as she got back into her car to head home, she became confused, in a daze. In desperation, she drove and drove, hoping to find something familiar, hoping to find her way home. 1 hour passed. Another hour passed. You can imagine that she peered into the darkness, driving slowly, looking, searching, hoping to find something familiar. But as time passed, she drove further and further from home. At 2 o'clock in the early hours of Friday morning, yesterday, she drove onto a narrow little road that wound up through the hills. Up and up she went. Around this curve and around that curve. Slowly, she ascended until she drove to the end of the road. Where was she? She did not know. She only knew that it was a dead end, and it was not home. She backed up to turn around, little realizing that she was about to back over a cliff. In a dimension that we cannot see, in realms that we can only imagine, in ways that are unrevealed to us, there is a cosmic conflict that wages war for our lives. Many may be almost ready to back over a cliff. It's not a science fiction movie, it's real. Hollywood has no corner on the market. The Apostle John records in Revelation 7, 1-3, "After this I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth, so that no wind should blow on the earth, or on the sea, or on any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the rising of the sun, having the seal of the living God. And he cried out with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was granted to harm the earth and the sea, saying, 'Do not harm the earth or the sea or the trees until we have sealed the bondservants of our God on their forehead.'" 4 winds. 4 corners represents it as a universal storm that is about to blow. This other angel appears having a seal of the living God. What's a seal? A seal declares ownership, territory, authority. And you can imagine in this unseen dimension that God's protection is almost at an end. There are heavenly beings that are commanded to hold back this universal storm that is about to unleash its fury. Another angel rapidly appears on the scene with a seal to mark those who are faithful bondservants of God on their forehead. A bondservant is someone who is absolutely devoted to Jesus. The person is under the authority of Jesus and willingly serves him. The seal on the forehead indicates ownership and total loyalty to God. You remember August 23, 2005? Well, maybe not. But the meteorologist noted that a tropical storm was forming over the Bahamas. And over the next few days, predictions indicated that a massive hurricane was headed for New Orleans. And it was going to be the mother of all storms. On August 28, Mayor of New Orleans, Roy Nagin, issued a first ever mandatory evacuation to its approximately 500,000 citizens. Some 112,000 citizens did not have access to a car. And if you remember, buses were provided to bus people out. 10,000 people sought refuge in the Superdome, while others decided to wait it out in their homes, hoping for the best. Sunday evening news reporter Shepard Smith was there in the French Quarter and on Bourbon Street of New Orleans, asking people, "What are you waiting for?" Disaster was coming. The storm was imminent. Why are you here? What are you waiting for? There was a man named Sam who said, it'll probably downgrade. New Orleans is a strong city, and we've always dodged the bullet before. We'll make it this time. Another man was playing video poker in a bar on Bourbon Street. When asked, "What are you waiting for?" he said, I missed my flight and thought I'd grab a few beers and I'll go to my hotel, get some dinner, and watch a couple of movies tonight. It was business as usual. Jesus made an analogy about two classes of people who heard his words, Matthew 7:24-27. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them may be compared to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the wind blew and slammed against that house, and yet it did not fall, for it had been founded on the rock. Everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and slammed against the house, and it fell, and great was its fall. Everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them, I thought you'd flicked it again. The devastation left by Hurricane Katrina was unimaginable. Nearly 2,000 people were killed. 90,000 square miles were affected by the storm. Some 34,000 people had to be rescued. You probably saw the images on TV and the internet. You heard the descriptions given by television reporters. What we saw was apocalyptic. The catastrophe was of nearly biblical proportions. People were stunned. This can't be happening in America. You know that Katrina ranks 8th in the deadliest disasters in America. But it ranks number 1 as the costliest disaster the United States has had. Interestingly, on the list, the hurricane in Galveston in 1900 has the record for the most lives lost. You see, there was no meteorologist to predict the storm's landfall, and there was no television to warn of impending disaster, and the mayor did not have an opportunity to warn. And many lives were lost. They estimate that it was between 6,000 and 12,000 people that died in that hurricane. So how does all of this play into the end times events? In New Orleans, interestingly, people were warned. Some heeded the warning and left. Others were indifferent, and others still were belligerent. Some tried to escape, and some felt stuck. Read Matthew 24:21 to 20 and onward with me. For then there will be a great tribulation such as not occurred since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever will, unless those days had been cut short. No life would have been saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Then if anyone says to you, behold, here is the Christ, or there he is, do not believe him. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and will show great signs and wonders, so as to mislead, if possible, even the very elect. You see, Jesus, our meteorologist, gives us warning. He would have us prepared. The Bible warns us that something sinister is up. Satan will try to deceive. 2 Corinthians 2:11-14 says, and no wonder, for even Satan himself disguises himself as an angel of light. In the great controversy, this statement is made, while appearing to the children of men as a great physician who can heal all their maladies, he will bring disaster and disease until populous cities are reduced to ruins and desolation. Even now he is at work in accidents and calamities by sea and by land, and by great conflagrations and fierce tornadoes and terrific hailstorms, in tempests, floods, cyclones, tidal waves, and earthquakes. In every place and in 1,000 forms, Satan is exercising his power. A natural disaster is a perfect setting for Satan to set up his master deception. Think of it. People hungry and thirsty, sickness and death, devastation, tempers flaring. Satan impersonates Christ in a deliberate attempt to deceive. You remember the night that Jesus was betrayed? Jesus took his disciples to the Garden of Gethsemane where he prayed. And Luke records that Jesus said to his disciples, pray that you enter not into temptation. And Jesus went a little ways and agonized in prayer to his Father. And Matthew records that he comes to the disciples and he finds them sleeping. So Jesus said, so you men could keep watch with me for 1 hour? Keep watching and praying that you enter not into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And he went away a second time and he agonized in prayer. And again, he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. And he left them again and went away and prayed some more. Then he came to the disciples the third time and he said to them, are you still sleeping and taking your rest? Like the disciples, we are in a daze. The signs tell us it's time to wake up. As we've watched the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, and even more recently, the Boston Marathon bombings, the beheadings, the Hatchet Man in New York, and many other incidences of rampant shootings at high schools, theaters, schools, I found myself asking Jesus the same question that Shepard Smith was asking people in downtown New Orleans that Sunday night. Jesus, what are you waiting for? How much longer do we have to go through this mess? The prophet Habakkuk asked the Lord the same question. How long, O Lord, will I cry for help and thou wilt not hear? I cry out to you violence, yet you do not save. Why do you make me see iniquity and cause me to look on wickedness? Yes, destruction and violence are before me. Strife exists and contentions arise. Do you ever find yourself asking that question? What are you waiting for, Jesus? What is he waiting for? At the beginning of the sermon, I read from Revelation 7, Jesus is waiting to seal his bondservants. Speaking of the seal of God, Ellen White says, it is not any seal or mark that can be seen, but a settling into the truth, both intellectually and spiritually, so that God's people cannot be moved. We are into a time of settling into the truth. God is giving us an opportunity to make up our minds. World events call our attention to the fact that we must make a decision. What are you waiting for? While I'm asking Jesus, what are you waiting for? He puts the question back to me. Jan, what are you waiting for? Jesus is waiting for me and you. God never destroys without giving warning. I believe he's trying to wake us up. Stop! Stop! A man yelled out of the darkness. Stop! You are about to back over a cliff. Thankfully, the Japanese lady heard the warning and heeded it. You see, Ken and Maxine Carter invited a friend of theirs, John, over to celebrate his birthday. Now, John's kind of a crusty old man, but they've developed this friendship. And they were celebrating another year of John's life. And if you know Ken, as many of you do, you know he loves to talk. And Ken, John, and Maxine got to talking. Time just ticked by. And it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. Normally they don't stay up that late, but it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and Maxine got up. She walked toward the window, and she couldn't believe what she was seeing. There was a car driving by their window. And so she said, Ken, a car just drove by. You better check and see what's going on. And Ken left. And a few minutes later, Ken wasn't back, so John and Maxine headed out, and they found Ken and the Japanese lady. They talked the Japanese lady into spending the rest of the night. After some sleep, they fed her breakfast and waited until family could come to make sure she was home. And they'll call and care for her. Think about it. A woman in a daze. Yet in God's providence and mercy, the woman is guided to a safe haven. The devil would have had her back off a cliff, yet Ken and Maxine were awake and available to save her. And their friend John, well, he heard their testimony of God's providence and protection. Just as Shepard Smith asked the important question of the people in downtown New Orleans the evening before Katrina hit, what are you waiting for? We may be asking Jesus that same question. He answers, I'm waiting for my bondservants to be sealed, to settle into the truth. And as we face the closing seconds of Earth's history, Jesus is asking us that same question. Phil, Tom, Carol, Zell, Kate, Japez, what are you waiting for? I'm waiting for you to make a decision for me. I'm waiting for you to be fully committed. I'm waiting for you to wake up. Not only is Jesus waiting for us to make a decision for him, but also he is waiting for us to warn others who are just about ready to back over a cliff. And Jesus wants to save them too. He's waiting for you and I to have heart for others. What we saw taking place in the Gulf Coast was unthinkable, but it's child's play compared to what's coming. Right now, there are some of you who've experienced personal hurricanes in your lives. There are some of you who've experienced incredible losses over the past few years. But there's good news, even in the storm. Daniel 12:1, he gives us these words. Now at that time, Michael, the great prince who stands guard over the sons of your people, will arise. And there will be a time of distress such as never occurred since there was a nation until that time. And at that time, your people, everyone who is found written in the book, will be rescued. There's an incredible time of trouble to come. But now more than ever before, we must gather together mutually and encourage each other. Hebrews 10 says, and let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, not forsaking our own assembling together as the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Therefore, do not throw away your confidence, which has a great reward, for you have need of endurance, so that when you've done the will of God, you may receive what was promised. For yet, in a very little while, he who is coming will come and will not delay. But with that question of, what are you waiting for? There comes an invitation. Revelation 3:20, behold, I stand at the door and knock. And if anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and will dine with him and he with me. We're in the process of being sealed right now. We can't wait to get ready until the last minute. We must get ready now. We must be settling into the truth now. We must be focusing on our relationship with Jesus now. We must warn others about the cliff that they're about to back over. Jesus is soon to come, and he's the only one who will get us through earth's darkest hour. This time it's real time, because it's the end time. So the final question, church, what are you waiting for? Soon and very soon, we are going to see the King. Father in heaven, what are you waiting for? We're longing for that day. So wake us up. Come into our hearts and lives like never before. Stir us that we may be ready and that we may have others with us to meet you. We can't wait for that day. Bless us now with your presence. Amen. Amen.